So I'm going to go ahead and kick off this by saying welcome. Hello, everyone. Mark Kachepi. I'm going to be doing some live coding just on Django in general. My goal is to make a couple of Django sites. The first one being the UbuCon Django site. This is a project of Ubuntu-based conferences that are happening. They have a Django site, so I want to make it really easy for them to be able to deploy this into the cloud. And the second one is the Taiga stuff that I was working on earlier. Taiga's backend is actually all Django. So it makes sense to split this out to a very simple, abstracted Django layer that other sites can just easily inherit and build on top of. So I've done this work already a little bit based on all the Taiga backend stuff I did the last coding session. So a lot of this code I already kind of pre-had. I just kind of split it out. So I'll show kind of what I have right now. So let me go to charms, layers. So right now I have kind of this structure. I have a actions.yaml, a config.yaml, a layer.yaml file, metadata file, which kind of has these pre-filled fields. I've got a reactive directory with the Django.Pi, a README file to explain how to use this layer, and then a couple of templates. These templates I've actually copied one for one from the Taiga charm. So I basically copied the Taiga back.py and renamed it to Django.py. And I already made a couple of changes, including adding these actions and a config.yaml. So let's see what these look like. So starting off with the metadata YAML, this is what I have for metadata. And the idea is simple. This is kind of a partial metadata YAML file. I got the tags, Django, CMS, seems to make sense. I've also got a provides and requires section. And these are the relationships that I want to model in Django natively. Now, I know Django connects to a lot of database backends, MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, probably a few others that I'm not aware of. I'll eventually have those all modeled here as well, but starting off as a minimal viable product, Postgres is what we mostly use at Canonical, so Postgres will be the first thing I support because it gets me up and running as easy as possible. Now, all Django websites provide an HTTP endpoint, so I want to pre-bake that in so no one has to manage that repeatedly. And the idea behind this Django layer is I want to solve as many common problems as possible without creating these weird, unique snowflakes and cases. There will never not be a Django site that doesn't have an HTTP endpoint. The database is a little trickier, but at this point, this is the best way to handle that. So from a layer.yaml perspective, what I have is I need my basic layer, I need a Postgres interface layer, and I need my HTTP interface layer. And that's pretty straightforward. This is pretty much what was already existent in the Taiga backend charm. The real interesting thing is the Django.py file. This handles all of that logic. So I want to kind of walk you through what I already have done here. So let me split this. I got two Django.pys. One is in the lib charms directory. The other one is my reactive Django.py. So lib charms I'm treating as a library file, basically. The idea behind it is that common methods that I don't want to pollute inside of my charms Django, my reactive Django.py file. So scrolling through, let's make this 80 column friendly. And that's apparently not going to happen in the split. So bear with me for a second here. We'll get to what all this is. In fact, I'm just going to boop these guys down. So my install is pretty straightforward as was before. There are a lot more packages in here that I don't actually really need. But the base things is this will install the Python 2 and Python 3 dependencies and some other additional tools I know I need, things like the PostgreSQL client and client common in order to make the connections, as well as libpqdev for building the Postgres Python library stuff. And then I'm going to ignore this for a second and get back to what this is. Then I'm just going to call pip to install some dependencies. I'm going to do a source install, which I'll talk about in a second. Open the port based on the configuration, so in the config.yaml here. I allow the users to modify whatever the value they want for port to be, for which Django runs on. This is Django running GUnicorn. And that's it. Then we also have what happens when we connect the Postgres database. So when we connect the Postgres database, we create a local.py file. This needs to change. This is still some blatant copy pasta from the Taiga back example, as you can see. But it should be pretty easy to update that to be a more generic structure. And then finally we have the start service, which is just make sure that the services, Circus is running. And Circus I'm using as the process manager. That's what Taiga back uses. Seems pretty straightforward. It worked pretty well. It's also installed by Python, by pip. It's a package there like GUnicorn is. So Circus will run and make sure that whatever I tell it to run is running, in this case GUnicorn. That's it. Now these are the couple methods left over from the last one. The source install and the load data. I'm going to refactor a lot of this out actually. This is something that needs to be done on an application layer, not necessarily here in the Django layer. So that's what I'm going to work on doing now. The final bit is this Django config. So every charm that builds on top of the Django layer, for instance, this chart here, the Abucon charm layer, it requires a layer Django. It will produce a Django.yaml file. And this YAML file will include these keys, and the idea behind here is that it can outline the things that it needs another layer to do as config context. So what this means is that since these charms, when built, the sources will be in the same directory tree, the Django.python file can have access to these settings that are unique for the site. This is how we can kind of illuminate a configuration layer within services. So another example of this in the charm layer world is the Apache PHP layer. There is an apache.yaml you can include, which will allow you to define a certain set of what virtual hosts to create and other such things. I'm taking this just a slightly different route where you will define parameters that are specific to your Django application. Each Django application is unique, but still follows a very similar set of criteria. So this is the additional apt packages that need to be installed. This is just the regular YAML list. The path which you wish to install Django to. This will default to, I think, /opt/Django. The requirements file. Alternatively, you could provide a pip packages key. And this is just a list of pip packages, something like charm, reactive. So you can include any line that you can normally type on the pip you can include here, including excluding the version numbers as well. So just this will start the pip install charms.reactive. There is no need to do this since we have a requirements.txt file. Most Django projects, well, most Python projects have this already, so there's nothing to worry about there. This is where the WSGI loader is, so the GUnicorn knows how to boot this up. This is also pretty standard, just depends on the name of your application or your directory structure for your Django application. The source to pull this is in Bazaar under lp:/ubucon site. This could also be a GitHub URL or just a Tarball URL. The charm will be able to handle all of those. And then finally, we have the interpreters to use. So we have Python, the Python interpreter. This could be a full path. So if you want to use Python 3 for everything, you just include the path to Python 3 and make sure Python 3 was in your apt packages. This uses Python 2 for everything. Taiga backend uses Python 3, which is why I included this explicit call out here. So as we go into the world of Xenial and 1604 Ubuntu, where Python 2 is no longer included, Python 2 will become a apt package dependency you have to install, since Python 3 will be available out of the box. So you want to make sure that you call out this to be Python 3, etc. Outside of that, that's basically what you define here. So this is the Django config. This is what I'm calling Django config in the layer. So Here I had this Django.config method. Django is being imported from Charm, so this is calling this method here, which simply opens the file and then loads the contents of it. Pretty simple, straightforward way to get that data. So what I do is I install this base set of packages that I know I need for every Django install, and then every other additional apps package that's requested of me. And if this list doesn't exist, we'll simply make sure that they get a proper default value. Also, when I do a source install, I pass in the DCFG. So this gets passed in here, which means I have things like where I get the install path to, in this case /srv/ubucon. I'll make sure that directory exists, and then I'll do an install remote, grabbing the source URL and putting it in the installation path. And that way, we're kind of following that mentality that the config drives how this whole layer works. Likewise, we do the pip requirements. So if pip requirements exists, we will call the pip the user has requested. We'll do an install against that pip requirements file. And we will do this. I just noticed there's a slight problem here. We need to change the current working directory. So we need to actually use this. We need a call command. I just found the first thing I need to fix here. So this is the right idea. We want to do this. We don't need to do the version of Python. We just need to call the command. And the command needs to be called from the current working directory. And that needs to be set to the install path. So Django.manage then just needs to be call manage.py plus the commands, and the current working directory will already be set for us. There, that works out a little better now. So this just becomes Django.call. Okay, much better. And we're not doing pick packages yet. I may actually just remove that altogether. I don't have a support for it yet. And then we render the circus file. And the circus ini file looks pretty straightforward. It's just, the command to run, in this case I'm using offbind as the command. So offbind will allow me to bind to a lower, under a privileged port, any port under 1024, without actually being a privileged user. So GUnicorn can bind to port 80 if the user selects it. If the user selects 8080 or whatever the default is, then that won't be a problem at all. So in the case where you just want to run GUnicorn with no other web server, you can do that, no problem. What I'm going to show is how to run this also with Nginx as your web server in front of GUnicorn, and also Nginx serving your static files, which is another compelling case. And I'll show you how that's done as well towards the end of this one. Since the Nginx layer has already been created, we can just reconsume that. So what we'll do is we'll change the configuration to use port 8000 or something other than port 80 and have Nginx run on port 80. Another thing I need to do here is these get installed as root and root This needs to be installed as user Django. And this needs to be written to where does this get written to? Interesting. I'm not sure if a local.py file would work here. So they're using Django 1.7. Oh, I guess it's not too terribly old. There's 1819. Maybe local.py isn't a common convention. Oh, I guess it is a pretty common convention then. So where's settings.py? So there's a settings.py. There's a Bucon site. And there's settings. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Alright, maybe it's in use.py, although I don't. No, it's not. So this doesn't actually do... This doesn't do what I thought it would, local.py. Apparently that's not a common convention. This kind of blows my whole Django thing out of the water. One thing to ask is, how does the current Django charm handle this, which is alright, but it's kind of crazy as far as implementations go. What? The hell is settings dir path? Where's settings injection path? Huh? Okay. Looks like it's just appending these to the file. Ooh. I don't like that. Okay, so settings pi path. Huh? I don't get what's going on here at all. This is so bizarre. So it looks like it just dumps these files. Yeah, just like they dump these files in the settings injection path. As number hyphen whatever.py, but the UbuCon site wouldn't even be able to process that either, I don't think. I'm really not sure how that works currently. I'm going to go back and assume this is local.py is a thing that would work. Until I'm told otherwise. And I may need to work to update their repo just slightly to support that kind of an idea. Here we go. Anyway, so this should do what I wanted to do, but I need to have this path derived from stop path.join whatever we got going on in DCFG is Django.config. And I'm just going to join for now. DCFG install path with this guy here. Even though that won't quite work exactly the way I want it to. I have to have install path, and I have to have something like config path is ubucon underscore sites. Slash settings. So this is the config path relative from the source directory. Settings, and here we have this init.py. And it seems like at the very bottom here, in order for me to do what I'm trying to do, is all these settings are great and they should be in here. I should really just try import local. What did the internet say I need to do? Actually, I guess this would be the better way to do it, wouldn't it? What does my template say? Blah, 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 blah. Template. Local.py. Yeah, but this is so specific to the Taiga stuff. This is problematic. So all these settings are for Taiga, and they're all specific to Taiga, and I get that. But things like media root and static root and databases, like database is like a standard thing here. This is basically what I'm trying to write out right now. It's all I care about is databases. I guess what I could do is... I don't know what I could do. I'm not going to put this here, though. I may need to add another configuration field to define where the settings file is. So I could write this out to an arbitrary location that does an import from the project root. So for instance, Taiga has a settings directory with a development.py file in there. So this local.py, which is run by somewhere, executes it. Let's see how they do it here. So yeah, settings directory, and then they have an init.py file, which will try to import local, and then will instead fall back to development. So in this file, it's like what I need to do is I don't know what I need to do actually. This is kind of a hard problem. So this is not a standard thing. This is something that the Taiga people have come up with a solution for the settings stuff. It sounds like I need to prompt the user to give me their import. Oh, new design. Cool. Design looks good. I need to prompt the user where their import path is. Or do something super drastic. And then I move their init.py file. No. Man, I've kind of boxed myself into a corner on this one. Well, this is annoying. So if I just cast the flag, Django management, settings equals local settings, or settings equals Juju settings, or whatever it may be. I wonder if that's a way that I could. So I'm just going to write these to juju.pi for now. And so juju.pi will import settings.
Okay, cool. But this just bores me to death. So let's load some new sound or Nexus presets before we fall asleep. Too soft. Too hard. Too noisy. Yes, that's perfect. It's the most downloaded preset. It's called Melbourne Bounce. Let's go with this. But first, let me take a selfie.
Yeah, that wouldn't really work either because...
Sounds good. Hey, bro. It's good, but it's not perfect yet. Now let's check some top DJs' track lists to find some inspiration. Look, Tiesto plays Big Room. Hardwell plays Big Room. Ella plays Big Room. Melvin Harris, Afrojack and Axwell play Big Room. Obama plays Big Room. Chuck Norris plays Big Room. So forget the previous tracks and go Big Room. Try the snare. Don't forget to screen some random words like "Get the bass kick." Finally, perfect track, but all the labels are saying Big Room is too popular now. Can you also produce rap? So just keep the same synth and change the beat. Great, now you're ready to be a top DJ. But, last minute update, DJs are not cool anymore. Now, the trend is playing in a band, so just buy a guitar and try again.
Okay. So I'll just be writing out media and static roots. Static media. Well, there's static and media on both sides. So I'm going to need to ask for media and static URLs as well in Python Django. In the save this. think I'm pretty sure debug is a standard. Alright, so now we have a way to switch that flag. Let's go back to local.py. This whole copyright header is no longer valid. Okay, so now we have that in place. So I'm going to leave this from settings import all. This local.py file I'm actually going to locate in the root of the directory. So it's going to be... I need a media path, static path. Okay. So I have the config path here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the base stir of this, which is just a bootcon site. For most others, it'll just be the root directory of the install path. Okay. This is a bootcon site. This is also a bootcon site. .bisgy. And it looks like I just need to pass this G-unicorn Django settings. Why did I see the word Django with here? Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So you could have the paster boot unicorn. That's not what I want. I want this here. Wow, this was super not helpful. Ugh. So it looks like I can actually just do this. So I need to add this to my boot up file. I really don't like the way this is going now. Python path equals this. There's the WSGI. Settings equals. It's being run from the root directory, so uboot com site slash juju dot. Probably actually just bootcon dot juju. Yeah, there's a WSGI here, but I set the current directory to execution out here. What is this? Oh, bother. Ooh. That is like a old way to try to manage a multi-scale deployment. That's crazy.